Hello guys, welcome back to Bit Byte Kilobyte. We are at our chapter 2 for Learn C Sharp from scratch. In this chapter, we'll be dealing with C Sharp basics, some of the things that you will need to get going with C Sharp. So the agenda for this class would be um, we will be dividing this chapter 2 into three parts. It will be three small videos. I split it up so that we can cover in a little bit of detail, but the video doesn't become too long for you to watch, so you can watch it with your convenience in three different parts. In part 1, we'll be covering the basic structure of a C Sharp program. We had created our Hello World application in chapter 1. If you have not watched that video, I would really recommend that you go back and watch that video before coming to chapter 2. So in this section, we will go through that program and try to understand the different elements of that program and what it does. Next, in the part 2 video of chapter 2, we will be discussing about data types. We will deep dive into many different types of data types are present in C Sharp, as well as how they are stored in memory. In part 3 of this chapter 2, we will be talking about some common library methods. These are the ones which you will be using in day out when you are programming in C Sharp. We will also see some of the basic features of the IDE, like how do you debug, how do you place a breakpoint, and we'll also talk about how you can import external libraries and use them in your project. So with that, let's get going. So here's our first Hello World application that we had made in chapter 1. We will just reopen that. So we have it open. We left it here. Now let's revisit this and see what is the structure of this program and what are its components that help you to run this program. So on the top, the first line of our program is using system. So what is this system? So C Sharp along with .NET Core comes with a huge set of libraries which gives you inbuilt functionalities that you can use in your program. In our case, we are using this functionality to write something on screen and read a key from the keyboard. So these methods belong to a class called console. And this console class resides under a namespace called system. Now, what is a namespace? So we have also put our code inside this namespace, but what is this namespace all about? So namespace is nothing but a logical grouping of classes. Now C Sharp and .NET Core has hundreds and thousands of methods and classes within it, but they need to group them together. So these are grouped in a logical fashion so that classes or methods that do something similar belong to one group. So you can assume system as one of those groups. Here, what we are saying is we want to use this group to do something in our class. So the moment you click control, you will see when you hover on top of this console, this becomes a hyperlink. If you click on that, it will give you the source of that class. So if you see this, this is inside a namespace called system. And that's what we are using, namespace system, and the class within it called console. When we created the project, C Sharp or Visual Studio placed it inside a namespace called My First Hello World. By default, the namespace will be the name of your project. So name of my project is My First Hello World. So that's the same namespace that is being used here. Under that, we have something called class. In this chapter, we will go much more detail into classes, but for now, consider this as a logical grouping of methods and attributes. Inside the class, you have a method. This is called a method which does something. So here we have these lines of code which we had written, and this is how the structure of our program. Now, if you come to the right hand side, you have the solution under which you have the project. So solution acts as a placeholder of multiple projects. So currently we have this My First Hello World project inside this solution. I can very well go ahead and add another project into this. This I say will be a console application again. I hit next and I'm calling it Hello World again. Once the project is created, you will see now inside the solution there are two projects. So after solution, let's talk about these projects themselves. If you click on the project, you will see The project file contains nothing but a group of properties. Here you can see it's saying what is the output type of your project, which, because it's a Windows operating system, it has defaulted itself to exe, which is the application extension for Windows. And it also talks about what is the target framework, which we had selected, .NET 5.0. So this is what the project contains. Now let's move on to the dependencies. Dependencies is again a collection of frameworks that your program will be using. Like in our program.cs, we were using this namespace. So this namespace belongs to something called a DLL file. So this system namespace needs to be coded somewhere, right? And that is coded inside that library. So if you come here and click on frameworks and .NET Core.app, you will see there's a system. So this is an assembly. And as I said, this is nothing but a DLL file. If you just expand this, you will see the path here, which is system.dll. Let me just drag it a little bit more. Here is the path of that DLL file. So the code to write something on screen, which we are using in our program, is actually written inside this DLL file. So we are using this inside our program. This helps us to not write the underlying code for how to print something on the black screen that is already written and developed by Microsoft, which we are using via referencing a library here and adding it as a reference here on the top. Now, what if I remove this? If I remove this, immediately you will see that now your program doesn't know where this console is coming from because you have not written code for this. You are just calling a method. Now, that's why you are seeing this error. A very cool thing of using Visual Studio is if there's an error, it will suggest you solutions for that. So see, it's already telling you that you can solve this problem if you use the keyword for referencing the library or the namespace using system. You click on this, that line again gets added as it was, and the error goes away. Make sense? So this is the high-level structure of a C# program. Now let's move to see how when you are writing the program and running it, what happens behind the scene. Okay, so we wrote our program called program.cs, which is nothing but a text file where you can write text, which is a C# code. What happens after that when you compile that program, that becomes an executable file. So if the name of your project is My Hello World, it will convert itself to an executable file called myhelloworld.exe. So the project has your CS file, you compile and you get a myhelloworld.exe file. Now the operating system doesn't know anything about this program, how to build it or what to do with it. All the operating system care about is myhelloworld.exe because this is an executable program or an application for Windows. So inside this exe file, if you remember our code, we had this public static void main. Now, why do we need this public static void main and why it has to be like public static void main? The reason being, when the operating system runs it, it needs to execute something. How will the executable know where to begin with? So every program that runs in Windows or any other operating system needs an entry point. By entry point, I mean from where your execution will start. So in C#, that entry point is defined in this fashion. It has to be a function called public static void main. This is how the program signature should look like. And then you come inside and then you write what you need to do inside that program. So your first entry point of your program is from public static void main, which the operating system invokes by executing myhelloworld.exe. So getting back to the code, this is our entry point. When you run my program, this is the first thing that will get executed. So that was pretty much it for the structure of a C# program. I hope this clears up some of your doubts that why do we need to maintain this structure, what is this main, and why do we need to write code inside this main. Now move over to part 2 of chapter 2, my very next video, to have a in-depth learning about data types in C#.